Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be putting an aftermarket oil pan baffle into the GTO oil pan, and I'm really happy that I got this. After I do that, I'm going to get the front and the rear cover, the flex plate, intake manifold, throttle body, and as much of the accessories on this as I possibly can. If I had the damper, we could throw this in the car today, and if I had the factory one, I'd probably throw it on and throw it in the car, but the guy never gave it to me, and ATI says the one that I ordered is another 4.5 weeks out. It's a long time, so I have to wait. But we'll get as much of this together as we possibly can. So I ordered this oil pan baffle because I had concerns about oil starvation with a factory GTO oil pan baffle because it looks horrible. So this has the 4 trap doors, and these work really good for drag, road racing, drifting, etc. because you have these trap doors to prevent oil from sloshing. It's a really good system. They're pretty cheap. I'll put the link in the description. But as you can see from the factory one, it has this little tiny hole opening. Oil comes in from the bottom, some comes in from the top, and whatever is just, residually coming down from the engine from the oil pump. Once the oil pickup is in that hole, there isn't much volume, there isn't much volume of oil in that hole because there's an oil pickup, and I had a feeling that it was going to suck it dry, especially since I have the higher volume, higher pressure milling oil pump. So I got this, let's put it in and then get all the rest of this stuff back together. I now have the aftermarket oil pan baffle installed into the GTO oil pan, and from my understanding, these oil pans are very rare and actually very expensive. So GM didn't make very many front sump oil pans for LS's, and the GTOs had them. So to get the oil pan baffle out, you have to remove this transfer tube. As you can see, all the LS's are the same, so the oil passages are still in the back of the block, and it has to transfer oil to the oil filter. And since this is a front sump, I believe the oil filter is mounted up here. I think on Camaros, it's mounted on the back because the subframe is in that location. So this is the only one that's like this. And to get this baffle, the old one out, the new one in, you have to remove this, which is 2 10s here. Then you have 2 10s here. And then there's E-Torques for these studs. I'll put a link in the description for all this stuff, as well as a set of E-Torques. They're not very expensive, and it's a really good thing to have, especially on stuff like this when you need them. So it's pretty straightforward, and I'm really happy that I got this baffle because, as you can see, look at that pickup in there. She has so much more access to oil, and I'll have so much more confidence ripping this thing on the track and not having to watch the oil pressure gauge and be like, oh, it dropped for I was like full in it, it dropped for a second. Now I have a rod knock. Now I don't have to worry about that. So let's get this oil pan back on the engine. I'll also put the links in the description for all the gaskets and stuff if you guys want to do this. Same mod to your GTO. They also have a bunch of different ones. So they have ones for Camaros, etc. I mean, it's a very good mod to do on LS because oil starvation issues. And it's more, you have more confidence driving the car when you know it's not going to get starved for oil. So let's get the oil pan back on the engine. The engine is now ready to go back in the GTO minus this ATI damper. So if I had the ATI damper, we could be putting this in the car and getting her running today. But unfortunately, it's another 4 weeks out. So I ended up putting as much as I possibly could on here. We have the alternator completely mounted. The water pump's completely mounted. I had to use some ARP bolts I had laying around because I couldn't find the bolts for the water pump. And then I found an ARP crank pulley bolt, which is nice. And then the AC compressor bracket, I still need 3 bolts because there was bolts missing. So as you guys remember, when I got this, it was a pile of parts. Whoever was working on it didn't know what they're doing, and there's a lot of things missing. There's supposed to be a bracket up here, just like that, which is missing, and I need to find one of those so I can have a nice way to pull it and put it back in the car. But I did clean the intake manifold. So the intake manifold was really, really dirty inside. Not outside, inside. So it looks like there's sand and dirt, and it looks like they was sitting on the ground and stuff just blew in it. I tried brake cleaning it out. It wasn't working, so I used oven cleaner and some of that Ford foam, and now we have a clean intake manifold. But the reason it's not on the engine is there's some water still in there, some residual water, so I'm gonna let that dry out so I don't bolt it to the engine and then it rusts stuff because it's gonna be sitting for like a month. That being said, I also ordered some spark plugs because they didn't have them at the parts store when I got the water pump gaskets. I think I threw the water pump gaskets away, so I had to go get some other ones. And they're $10 cheaper on eBay. So I went and just ordered them on eBay. This thing's gonna be sitting for a month. They'll be here in 3 days. It's gonna be perfect. But otherwise, we have new crank seals. We have a new front, or we have a new rear and front main seal. We have the flex plate on, and she is pretty much ready to go, minus the intake manifold and putting it in the car with the ATI damper. Also, the headers are kind of haggard. So they look like a good set of headers, but they welded the exhaust directly to the headers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld V-band flanges on there and then clean the headers up in the next video, and then put the spark plugs in, put all that stuff on. We'll have the headers on there, and I'll just drop it directly in the car. But I just don't like how they look. They don't look very good. I have some brand new exhaust flanges from I think it's from an LS7. They're the multi-layer ones, just like the head gaskets, and we'll get this thing 100% ready to go. But for now, this is all the parts I have, and we're just kind of waiting on this damper. So I'm going to end the video here. If you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, throw a thumbs up, throw a comment below. I can't wait to rip this GTO. As always, see you guys next time.